Hey everybody, welcome to Grad Studies Academy. My name is Eric, and today I want to talk about how do you manage ADD and pursuing a graduate degree, a master's degree, a doctoral degree. You think ADD, how can you even focus for more than 3 seconds without going squirrel or whatever the tropes are? And just, you see the memes, whatever online. And well, there is some validity to that, but let me tell you just a brief history about myself and maybe some of these the tips that I've gone through and some of the tools that I've used. Once I was diagnosed with ADD in 2009, I did my master's before that, and I'm like, why didn't I know this now or then? And probably would have saved a lot of grief and figure out why did I, even in life, why do I do these things? Why am I impulsive? Why do I have it seems like no self-control? And let me tell you, I finished my master's at 35, so 2009, give or take, and then finished my doctorate of ministry, and at 49, and so before in April in 2023, and I also attempted a PhD in between there, and finished that. That didn't end like how I wanted it to end, but another video. All to say, I did a lot of schooling from about 2006 to 2009, and then 2014 to 2000. Pretty much, I was in a doctorate program from 2014 to 2023. 2 different ones. I finished my DMin in 2.5 years. And how in the world did I do that if I have ADD, and not just light ADD? I'm medicated so that it can help. Like, you might go, okay, that's great. If this isn't for you, that's not hey, not a problem. But maybe some of the tips that I learned might help you. And if you're already a master at organization, productivity, time management, that's awesome. But here I want to help. This channel is not about ADD. It's definitely not about that. But if you happen to be, you struggle with that, or even struggle with time management or productivity on how to do a master's degree and a doctorate degree and succeed, whether you're young or later in life, you have family. I have a family, a daughter and a wife, and a full-time job. So how do you do that? And do you grind? Do you get up at 3 a.m.? For the one PhD, yeah, there was times I got up at 3:30, 4 a.m. and I learned that's not a healthy way of doing things. There were times that I worked long days to get the thing finished, my doctorate, the dissertation finished, and to get it handed in on time. That's just life. Sometimes you have to work the long hours to get things finished. But so some of the tools that I did are used, learned by trial and error and lots of reading. But like for paper writing or writing, paper writing. In the previous video, I shared I wrote my papers by hand first with these are some Blackwings, but you can use whatever kind of pencils. You can use a Bic pen. Write them by hand. There's a whole process that helped me focus. I often listen to music. That's the way I often would learn. I still do for writing. Nothing like good background music. And that, but another way you'll read in productivity manuals, not manuals, YouTube, books and others. I learned how to chunk my time. I call it chunking. That I found I was able to do my doctorate and even my master's, where I saved one day off that I had for whether it's church, family, a day where I wasn't doing any school, reading, and time to just let my brain decompress. And so 6 days a week working. But I would chunk the time, either work a bit in the morning, or I'd always work in the evening, whether our daughter was in bed and that sort of thing. It's like, nope, this is from 9 to 10. I made a schedule that chunked the time, and I intentionally scheduled, it's another way, spend time with a wife, or have board games. As you can tell, there's quite a few behind me. I love board games. And so chunk time and intentional scheduling, and put it in a schedule and calendarized it, scheduled it in there. And then I did have classes. The doctorate, not so much. There was some live stream, but the master's I definitely had in class times. And I found during those times, so I knew I was going to be on campus for most of the day. So I would do my research on between the gaps, between classes, or I knew I was going to be like there all day, or I would spend an extra couple hours afterwards at the library doing research, that sort of thing. It's like I made that the day, so chunked it. Whatever works for you was how I did it, and it needed to be written down, and it had to be consistent. That's the key for finishing a doctorate, is sitting in this chair and doing the work, but also being consistent. With ADD or any type of neurodivergent, or where you're just scattered, and I could be lose sight. I could do things and lose sight and be like, oh, friends are going over here, I'm going to go do that. Or, oh, they're having a game night, I'm going to go over there. Or I'm going to go snowboarding. It was younger years. I'm going to go over there, and then miss classes. And it helps having a partner to be supportive, but having and written down and scheduled and posted. My first video, I talk about having the end in mind, graduation date. That's what I'm working towards. And everything else, all my classes, when assignments are due. And I'm going to develop a kind of a tracking guide. I do have a tracking guide. I just need to fix it up and offer that as a freebie down below. Just hit subscribe, and you can add that and use that, and maybe it'll help. And everything was just written down. You have things down in Google Sheets, whatever. But I knew what I was doing. So Mondays this was my schedule, and Tuesdays. And there was room in there. It's like, you know what? I don't know. It wasn't every minute scheduled, but there was blocks of time. And time allowed for fun, time allowed for seriousness and relaxation and life. And so that was kind of the main thing for managing a doctorate and as someone with ADD. It supports, but definitely chunking time and using the time well and knowing when to break. And one thing I've gotten into is setting timers. You might hear the Pomodoro technique. Got this little timer. Yeah, I think it's a kid's timer. But when I'm doing writing, now I write fiction on the side. It's a hobby, but it's like, oh, I'm gonna write for 20 minutes, because the opposite can happen. You're just writing and going, and you're working, and it's great. And next thing, it's an hour. It's gone by 2 hours. Like, hey, no, it's 11 o'clock. Yeah, you still have to get up early. If you have young children, you got to get up, get them ready to school. So overworking and working late and not being cognizant of time, you can also have the same detriment effect. You can lack of sleep. You're running behind for work or for meetings. So definitely have things timed, and knowing I'm working for an hour, and that's what I have today, and maybe I can squeeze in an hour and a half. But I don't want to burn myself out. And I was able to do this and manage it, and getting a doctorate done in 2.5 years. And the average for a doctorate is 4 to 8 years. And I'm not special, but it definitely was consistent, and being disciplined and the grit to do it. I think that's the biggest thing. Having the end in mind. There's the date I want. I'm going to graduate, and I'm going to get there. It wasn't easy. I even had a death of a family member in the middle of doing my doctorate, and so that definitely throws a wrench in the whole system. So I've been there, and not easy, but all to encourage you that if you've started, you can do it. You just need to have systems in place. Build those systems, and if someone with ADD, like bad medicated, can finish a doctorate and for the most part stay on track, albeit at times very challenging, but I had to almost religiously. I know I went to a seminary to do my doctorate, but you have to. It's like, this is my schedule, and part of a schedule like that, and there are times to say no, and you have to learn. I had to learn how to say no. It's because there's always going to be things. You can't have the fear. You can't have FOMO. There's going to be FOMO, of course. My undergrad, I had FOMO. I didn't know the term was back then. We're talking the 90s, and to go and do all the things. So part of that is, chunking, intentional, and learning to say no. I know there's another author, Matthew Dix, say yes to everything. But you say yes to everything, then the things that matter sometimes get that are important get thrown to the wayside. I agree with saying yes on some things, but sometimes there's times for no. And then you have to head down and be working on the things, whether it's reading, watching the lessons, writing the papers, doing the work. But if you have the systems built, you can finish a doctorate or a master's degree and thrive and grow and enjoy your grad studies program and have a life and do well.